Hi friends, it's Salt. If you're new here, this channel is all about salt. Salt is the alchemical mineral of transformation. Salt cleanses, it heals, and it transmutes energy just like you do. This channel finds the rare archetypes who move through life differently. So if you found this, I'm really honored to have you and be one of the few who gets to see and reflect you properly. Downloads today are a little odd, a little surprising. I've never gotten something like this, and I've been doing readings for a really long time now. So that shows you how different today's message is. I'm being shown palms as the center of today's reading. So essentially, I'm doing a palm reading, and I'm doing that for the collective. I'll be putting notes in the description for your references, just so you know. There's probably always little details and goodies in the description. It's just easier for me to not have to explain the complexities as I'm getting them, so I can get to the core message and explain it to you all. For those who love the details, they will always be in the description to read more about, so always check that out. What an amazing digital age we live in, where I can reach so many and do such an individual, personal message in an abstract, collective way. I'm being shown this isn't a reading for someone who's felt karmically lucky or had an easy or effortless life. This is more for someone who's been waiting for luck or a break point of some kind, like ease or blessings that will come. It's almost like that distinction is really important here, like climbing up a hill. They're assuming they're going to get to the top eventually. That's the feeling. This doesn't mean that whoever I'm speaking to today isn't blessed or isn't abundant or isn't grateful. I think the important part here is the feeling of waiting for something in a way, like climbing up that mountain, thinking there's an end. It's the point where you don't have to fight so hard anymore. That's what you're waiting for. And things come easier to you, or at least are less inclined, less steep. I sense this honestly might be a really honest reading in a way people might not want to hear, because this doesn't really feel magical. This feels honest and hard. So that could be true for you as well. But I'm just giving that forewarning that I don't really feel butterflies. I feel truth. You aren't someone who had a predefined path necessarily. Your purpose coming into this life was really foggy, but where you seem to be unique is, instead of staying in that lack space or staying in that foggy space, you've built something, or you are building something, or you're resisting that fog in some way. It seems like the more common approach to not having a path is just sitting in that pathlessness. And I sense that you are not doing that. This is like the energy of people who keep standing up and keep trying again. So trial and error is important here, is resonant with this collective. Trial and error has possibly built the path for you, but it hasn't been easy, and you've carved it yourself without outside resources, is what I'm being shown. So there's really no show-off energy here. That's like the opposite of this energy. It's very quiet. It's very hard and earned. It feels like quiet authority, truly. I think where the people who I'm speaking to today differ from common or more typical people is, more typical hands that I've seen might have really messy or unclear lines, but this collective I'm speaking to today, in contrast, has very clear, long lines. And this reflects clarity, especially in later life, is what I'm seeing, is like building that clarity, sustaining that clarity. I also see the norm being shorter lines for the typical collective or the mass population. A lot of people might struggle with a lack of inner self that you possess. They more so rely on external sources to guide them, where I see you have a lot of inner authority and power. I do see this as like built authority. It's not given authority, which is again something that's typical when I see authority in someone's hands. This is the collective that builds stability and real authority as they essentially progress through this lifetime. Everyone's hands or paths have this potential, but I see this being something where you actively refined yourself while others stayed stuck in the trauma or noise that they really can't metabolize like you can. So, the real honest truth here that I see in the hands I'm being shown is who I'm speaking to today have truly just not had ease, karmic luck, or any shortcuts given to them. Now, I'm going to tell you some things that are honest about what I see in these hands. And I don't want you to feel saddened by the truth, because I'm going to get to the true positive of your life path that I feel you really can't see. But I have to tell you these truths first because they're important. So the hands I'm seeing that are the collective I'm speaking to today, they don't have any marks of karmic blessings. Like you don't have any deeply forked fate lines pointing to wealth, or I also don't see the hands I'm looking at having inherited privilege, meaning like anything given to them, privilege of like inherited wealth or power. There's no obvious mounts of Jupiter or dominance. There's no triple fate lines showing any outside help given to you. You don't have any fantasy driven indicators here. Like there's no Luna mounts. There's no suggestion of a life of inspiration that's been given to you on like this cloud. Sometimes I see that in people's hands where like they just are given inspiration to create in this way, and you don't have that. So in other words, you were likely not fully seen or resourced early in life. You had to grow your sense of value internally all on your own, not because someone gave it to you, because you either did that instinctively or you didn't feel you had a choice. Your headline starts independently, so you have a rare gift, but it's also an emotional tax. Like it means you were separated in consciousness early on, and that's lonely and really hard. Another thing is like your heart line, from what I'm being shown here, is long and clear, but it doesn't intersect with others. Like you likely have had to grieve connections that never matched your depth or your insights or your feelings and emotions. There's a couple of other things I see here too. It's like your fate line strengthens really late, not early on. Essentially what that means is clarity and stability are earned for you. It's not handed to you, and it's not like a fake spiritual gift. It's a real burden to have to earn something, right? The last thing I see here, which I think is probably the most important, is your mounts are balanced, but they're not inflated, right? So we're going back to that thought of like, this isn't someone who's showing off. This is someone who's quietly confident and quietly powerful. So you don't overcompensate by any means. You don't have any energetic extras in what I'm seeing. You move through life without glamour, but you have this deep, deep rooted integrity. And I'll talk about the main positive of your hands as I talked you through the hardships and the realness. But to summarize what I just said, the honest truth is, yeah, the reality is you are not lucky. You are not rescued. You are not going to be handed like success of extremes. But don't take this as saying you're never going to be successful, abundant, loved. Please, please don't take it that way. I just mean it in the extreme version of the sense is like, there's no fairy tales. There's no romance novels here. You are someone who becomes someone that others depend on, that others look to, that learn from, not because you asked or you wanted this, but because you were the one who kept going when no one else knew how. And people just turned to that instinctively. I'm having a lot of fun with this reading. It's very different. So apologies if it's not your liking, but this next part, I'm going to talk about what I see as the injustice forming here. This is a very strong feeling that I'm sensing and picking up from you. Now, you might be the type who feels others get privileges while you get challenges, especially as I just went over all those hard truths to sit with. I also get the sense that this is a discouraging pattern to be the one that others rely on when you have no one to rely on yourself. Like, that's what I see in the loneliness of these hands, is like, you don't want to keep filling up others and then feeling empty after you fill up all these other people. So the injustice you feel is very valid, and I am not going to invalidate that. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. But there's more here, I think, than you can see with just the injustice that you feel. You're not actually here to just serve others. That's not your purpose, is to be like this servant. You're not here to help people see themselves through your struggle. And you're not here to endlessly feel empty forever. But it may feel like that right now. And it may feel like during your first half of life, especially, you're building something more real than you can see, I think, through the difficulties you're facing. So let me explain it this way, I think, because it is quite easy to see the injustice versus what's actually going on here. Is a person who has ease given to them earlier in life through help, support, or just blessings that you can observe will struggle inevitably in other ways outside of this. There is no way out of this, especially later in life, when the timelines converge. Is no one is immune, in other words, to holding the weight of this human experience we're all on, even if it appears so, or they have blessings outside of what you don't. So you may look around and feel injustice, but this is only the cross of timelines you're really seeing, especially when high emotional tolls get activated. Is you're seeing the beginning of someone's blessings, not the later struggles, the balance of that blessing. The part here that you can't see with this angle that you're looking at others with is by seeing their ease and your struggle, you're assuming, in a way, as what I'm being presented, is like, it will indefinitely stay that way on both sides, but that's not actually how life scales work. Those 2 points of the scale are getting ready to rebalance. They don't stay on those extremes indefinitely. That's just not how life works. It's always moving. It's always rebalancing. The message here is pretty clear. As you continue to build through trial and error and continue to struggle and climb this mountain, the difference between you and these people that you might feel injustice for, and this might even not be specific people, you could just feel generally unjust, or there's a lack of justice for your circumstances versus what you feel others to have, is you get the reward at the end of the timeline while others get theirs at the beginning. Now, of course, there are exceptions to this that you might see, like someone perhaps relays their life to you and explains how it was always easy and explaining it to be effortless throughout and just being given things that you could never even fathom. But remember again that what you're hearing is their perception, their recollection. You're not hearing the total reality of those events and what that really entailed. So here's what I'm trying to say. Your reward doesn't feel glamorous. It's not a fantasy of total ease that just stumbles on you one day after a bunch of struggle, after you make it up this mountain and there's a peak. Your reward is building something real that no one can take from you. And that's not the case for those you might continuously feel injustice towards. Being given ease and abundance has strings attached to it, and it can be taken at any time because it's a gift. It's not built themselves. So I'm not just saying this to make you feel better or to help someone who gets a shorter stick be happy with their shorter stick. Like, I'm more so explaining that the shorter stick evolves to unbreakable steel, while those who are given longer sticks get weaker by the second, especially with the length they've been given. So I'm not just saying this to make you feel better or to help someone, feel better about their lack. What I'm trying to articulate here is you are building something real and authentic that you cannot see, and it had to be built by building people up and by your breaking down. You couldn't get to this place without filling people up until you're empty. That's the only way that what you're building gets built. So In other words, you couldn't get a stick made of steel without being broken down into nothing multiple times. Those who you see with the easy long sticks have a much more difficult challenge than you can see clearly, especially in the thick of your building stages. There is no escape from pain here in this human experience. I want to say that again. Spirit is showing me that again. But you are using your pain to build something very, very clear and unbreakable. It's just going to take a lot longer and it's going to feel unjust until one day you kind of look back and you see the timelines much more clearly. And because of how your timeline is evolving, you won't get there until much later. So when you get there, you'll kind of see this all level out and see much more clearly that the timeline that you were given was to build something much more sustainable, and others didn't get that gift of sustainability, of realness. It's not glamorous, it's not a fantasy, but it is what actually lasts. And that is your true blessing in this life, is to get to build something that actually lasts, that's yours, that no one can take from you. This last part is maybe a confirmation to those who already instinctively know to do this, but keep leaving comments. The comments themselves do not have to be anything personal about you. Think of these as energetic nudges. This helps me align to your energy more efficiently and be able to channel for you. And I want to be able to do that. I read each and every one, always. None are missed, none are ignored. I am so thankful for each and every one of you and love you all. So, cheers, friends.